really creepy.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the RSU 14 Board of Directors meeting. It is October 16th, 2019 and 6:30 p.m. We're in the Raymond Broadcast Modular. Mr.
Kate Bricks.
Here.
Eric Colby.
Present.
Jenny Cummings.
Present.
Don Dillon. Marge Gavoni.
Here.
Pete Hensler. Anna Keeney.
Here.
Kate Levier.
Here.
Scott McLean.
Here.
Will you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
There are no adjustments for tonight.
Now, it's an opportunity for public input now. If anybody from the public wants to have some input. Hearing none, it's now time for our Eagle Scout presentation. Alec Brooks is going to present about his Sandbach Eagle Scout project.
Hello, so I'm Alec Brooks. I was here not too long ago, I'd say, presenting to the board about getting approval for my Eagle Scout project at Raymond Elementary School. I've now completed my project at Raymond Elementary School. I made a sandbox and I also made a wheelchair accessible sand table, like it was in the drawings that I showed you beforehand. I have a slideshow with some photos of kind of the process I took to get to the completion stage, and I just wanted to share it with you guys. So this is a big group of the guys that worked with me to create the sand table. This is in progress. I had my younger brother and one of his friends. They did all the cutting for the landscaping fabric that we laid in so that the sand wouldn't go through the bottom, but it would let water go through. Beginning stages to the sandbox. Me and a friend, we assembled it outside the sandbox, and then in the second photo is us dropping it into the sandbox. So we made pretty much the entire thing outside, and then we just picked it up and moved it to where we had already dug. This is the second layer of the frame. So we put in the first layer of the frame, and then we covered it with landscaping cloth, and then we did a second layer, a layer of 4x4s on top of the frame, on top of the landscaping cloth to make sure that the landscaping cloth stayed down. And then we put the next layer on top of that with benches on top of that. So this is the fourth layer. We kept on adding sand as we went to get higher to ground level. And this is the finished final product. I had 3 layers of 4x4s, and then we had seats on top of that. And that is all the photos I have. I did get donated a lot of materials for this project by just people in the community, as far as toys for the kids to play with. So far, I mean, my mom works at the Raymond Elementary School, so she's been telling me, she comes home and says, oh, you know, kids love it, this is awesome. And part of the beginning stages when I did this project, I was talking, because I worked with Bill a lot about the money and how everything was going to work, and he told me, because for the wood I wanted to do a pressure treated sandbox, and he said that he wanted, due to school codes and whatnot, we upgraded to pressure, we upgraded to Western cedar. So I agreed with Bill that I was going to pay the price or I was going to pay what it was going to cost to build it and pressure treated, and the school was going to pay the rest of the cost to upgrade the lumber. So I have a check for you,
Okay.
which is what I owe you for my Eagle Scout project.
That's great.
So
Great.
thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank
That is
you.
all I have for tonight.
I have a second grade daughter at RES, and she is in that sandbox almost every single day when I pick her up at SAC. So, and there
That
are
is awesome.
always at least like 10 or so kids in there. So it's awesome.
That's
Thank you
awesome.
for doing that.
Very welcome.
We're amazed at how many kids actually use the table too.
Yes.
They actually like
Yep.
standing up and playing with the table.
Mm.
Yep. That's great.
Excellent project.
Thank you.
It's great. Does anyone have any questions? I'm very proud of you.
Thank you.
And on behalf of the RSU, I just want to thank you for your gift of service. There are a lot of kids who are going to be using this over many, many, many years. I'm also impressed with your presentation, that not only the pictures and how you captured this, but also how you also got Officer Fournier's car into the background. So he must have been up doing some safety things. So not sure if you knew that, but
I didn't pick that out.
nicely done.
I do have one question for you though, and you might have told us last time, but I don't remember. Why did you pick that project?
I picked that project because I have grown up in Raymond. I went to school at Raymond Elementary School. I went to Jordan Small. I now attend Greater Gloucester High School. But I wanted to do something that benefited where I came from. So to me, that was a good use of my time.
Yeah, well, you know,
That's
it's great to give back to your community, and you definitely did. I
Thank
think
you.
It's great.
I like the fact that you had your grandfather involved as well. So, yeah.
Real family affair.
Yes, it was. So I really appreciate it. We all do. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
job.
Do I just send like this?
Just go ahead and do that, and then we'll get that back to Ms.
With my Mary
Levier.
Poppins bag.
Okay.
See, I even know to write my name on it,
Ah.
so it comes back to me.
I'll just leave this back here. I think I'll
You know, we'll plug it back in.
Thank you. We're going to move on.
If he, excuse me, if he wants to, he can leave the microphone on the table.
Okay, thanks. Did you hear that?
I did hear
Alec?
that.
Okay, thank you. Next, we're going to move on to a recognition. And it says we have to, that we're going to recognize his years of service to the RSU. And I,
Nice job.
Thank you.
and I wrote up a little bit. So I have only known Eric for 3.5 years, as I've worked with him on the school board. I first noticed that he said present when everyone said here, or here when everyone said present. If there was a joke to be made, or a pun, or any other twist on words, he made it, and I felt welcomed by him from the very beginning. Even when I made a ridiculous assumption early on, he didn't say, "Boy, that was dumb." He just honored my opinion and moved on. But here's what I also know. This smiling, affable, funny man has a will of steel about his concern for the children and staff of the RSU. He is knowledgeable and prepared and involved, and his input will be missed. On behalf of the school board, thank you, Eric, for all that you have done to make things better for the RSU 14 communities. Sincere and personal thanks from me. And we also have this handy dandy plaque.
There you go.
All right, I'm gonna speak. spokesman like to think about later.
You can give a speech if you want. Short, really short.
I have no speech. I would just say that, I'll tell you, the community out there that, in the 6 years I've been here, working with the people in the district, and most of the people on the board, that are, even the past people, that there is definitely, a group of professionals that are working hard to make sure that money's well spent, the kids are well taken care of. They just take everything seriously. Not having any experience to what teachers did, and think, well, they get summers off and this, but to see the workload that we put on them, with all the increasing things in test and technologies and whatever else, to see them, have to bear up under. I have a greater appreciation for what everybody does. So I leave knowing that I have an excellent board that makes great decisions and cares about kids, a great district that takes seriously for any projects they do or any decisions that are made with the taxpayers' dollars, and I rest easy. And I hope anybody out there that wants to would take the time to get involved and just see how hard at work everybody is.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
All right, now comes my favorite time of the evening, the Maine School Board Association resolutions. I will read them, the resolutions, and we can vote. So I don't do, do we need a motion first? Okay.
I move to support the proposed MSBA resolution, staff use of social media.
So, the Maine School Boards Association supports development of local board policy and guidelines around the appropriate use of social media by employees during the workday and outside of school, and expectations and consequences for staff using social media to bully or disrupt the school learning environment. Schools need to be clear about who has authorization to create and monitor school-sponsored sites on Facebook and other platforms, and are encouraged to do appropriate training for staff around good digital citizenship. I'm not going to read the rationale, but I will only echo what Mr. Howell said, and that was that last time that we have already got a policy on this. So anyone want to discuss it? Okay. All those in favor? Nobody's opposed? Okay. Could I have a second motion?
I move to support the proposed MSBA resolution, school board use of social media.
Second.
Thank you. In recognition that many school board members use social media to communicate, the Maine School Boards Association would like to affirm the same standards apply to social media as other more traditional means of communicating. Those standards include making clear you are speaking as an individual and not on behalf of the full board, directing concerns or complaints about the district to the administration, conducting yourself online in a manner that reflects well on the district, using caution about inadvertently revealing confidential information, avoiding altogether conversations about contract disputes, investigations, or any other matters where the board must be impartial in its deliberations, and remembering that if a quorum of the board is discussing school business on social media or via email, it constitutes a meeting. Anybody want to discuss this? No? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay. Next one.
Okay. I move to support the proposed MSBA resolution, legislative focus on students.
The Maine School Boards Association,
Second.
oh, sorry, go ahead. The Maine School Boards Association would like to stipulate that legislators and our own Legislative Review Committee view every legislative proposal affecting public education through the lens of whether or not it is in the best interest of the students we serve. The impact on children should be spelled out both in the language of the proposed law and in the testimony we present. If the legislation does not have the student's best interest in its focus, it should be drafted or rejected. This proposal should be in the form of a resolve voted on the second session of the 129th legislature. Any discussion?
Can I?
Yes?
Just one comment for the public out there, in case you didn't watch our last meeting. We received these previously, so we are well aware of what they say. And thank you very much for going over them again.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed?
Okay, I move to support the proposed MSBA resolution, Board Teacher Relations.
Second.
Thank you. The Maine School Boards Association is committed to providing training and support to its members on ways to validate and improve the meet and consult process when adopting or amending education policy. The goal is to improve communication around key policies that most directly affect teachers and review and collaborate with staff on policies that need updating. In concert with that effort, MSBA would like to encourage and help train boards in interest-based bargaining to further support collaborative relationships between school boards and our teaching staff by welcoming their input. We also believe boards should create more avenues to provide teacher voice. Discussion?
Okay, that's something that you do when you're doing policies. I mean, there's people involved, right?
Yeah.
That's standard procedure.
we do
Yeah.
keep them in the loop.
I thought you did.
Okay. So what is your pleasure? All those in favor? Okay.
I move to support the proposed MSBA resolution, CTE funding restoration.
I second.
CTE funding restoration. This resolution calls for the state to restore career and technical education funding to fiscal year 2019 levels for all CTE regions. Any discussion? Can you give us some more guidance on this?
Sure. This is actually related to, there was a change in the way that the state funded CTE programs, which was putting it into an EPS formula and putting money directly to schools instead of in the past where it was funneled through local districts. And then based upon the number or percentage of students that you were sending to a center, you would then be billed that amount. So it's a different funding formula. And there have been some concerns with some of the vocational regions on how much money is allocated for some of the administration portions of it, as well as monies that have been allocated for students to run programming. And so this is a direct result of some of those conversations on CTE funding.
I think it's mostly affected rural
Correct.
communities.
All right.
Correct.
We probably haven't felt it as much here, but the rural schools really have.
Okay. So all those in favor? Motion carries. Okay, major capital projects, Mr. Hanson.
Good evening. Bill Hanson, Director of Facilities, RSU 14. I'd like to start off by first saying thank you to the board. I've been here for 10 years, and what I have felt through the 10 years is tremendous support to maintain our facilities. And I don't see that every place I go. And I'm just really impressed that you feel that's as valuable as the teaching portion as well. It's really important that we have not only facilities that meet our needs, but when the children come to the school, they need to look good. And you provided me the support, financial and resources to make that happen, and I want to thank you for that. So, as you're aware, I'm just going to go really quickly. We talk about capital in 3 different buckets, and we've talked about this before. I'll go over it really quickly. So, we have major improvement projects we call MIP. That's funded out of our cash in our operating budget. An example of a recent MIP project we just finished was the conversion of our outside lights at the high school from HID to LED fixtures that got done over this weekend. If you go by the high school now, you'll notice that the lighting is tremendously improved, and we're using a little over a third the amount of power that we were using before. So that's an example of a project that not only provides energy savings, but also is something that's done in our fiscal budget. Our second bucket is capital improvement projects. So they're generally lease purchases. An example of that would be the adult ed building that we purchased recently. That's a CIP project, and we financed it over a period of years. That's a 3-year finance. That's a project that you would approve, and we generally finance that through a local bank. In this case, I think it was Gorham Leasing that we went through with that. And the third bucket, which has been very helpful to me, it's been something that we've been using in the last 5 years, is capital reserve projects. The great thing about that is that we're able to use year-end fund balance allocated to those projects, and those projects are not tied to a fiscal year. And let me just explain why that's really important. This summer we worked very hard to do a major renovation to the primary school in a very short window. So we really have around 7 to 8 weeks to get this work done. If we always are waiting for funding to be approved for July 1st, and then you're trying to get a contractor on board, you can't make that window. It doesn't work. Okay? So by having money in capital reserves for these larger projects, we can plan ahead, we can bid ahead, we can have a contract ready to go, we can order materials before that time frame comes, because often things take 4 to 5 weeks just to get here. So if we waited till July 1st, it just wouldn't happen. So that mechanism we're using more, and I like it because it's not tied to a fiscal year. We can take money and put it aside. And an example is HVAC improvements for the middle school. We've had money sitting in that capital reserve fund for a while, as we've been looking at several alternatives. And this summer, we actually replaced 2 of the unit ventilators with a new style heat recovery unit. And I'm happy to take you through them and show you to them. And we're looking at is a test case to see if we want to continue that further down the road. By having the money in the capital reserve, I have the ability to do that work, evaluate it, get the feedback, and then we can move forward in a really well thought out effort in the years to come. So again, that's probably a huge change in the time that's been here, is that we're starting to use that mechanism more. As I talked to before, is our asset value of our district is around $200 million. And so we're looking at keeping that in shape at a 50-year life cycle. That's $4 million a year. Now, I've been really happy since I've been here. We started off with a capital budget of a couple $100,000. We're getting up to the $600,000 range on average now. I want to start working towards the $800,000 is where I really like to be. But we're getting to a point where we're sustainable to maintain our facilities. So it's really important that we understand that there's the initial cost, but then there's the ongoing cost that we have to continue to maintain. So our capital plan, we have a 10-year capital plan that we maintain. It's important to understand it's very fluid. Things change. Recently we put in for projects to the DOE for revolving renovation, some projects that would have some nice impact. Their priority level on that plan would change based on whether we get the funding from the state to get the work done. Because there's a 30% basically cost reduction if we are successful in that funding. Things like the RES playground to get the IRT help to make that happen. Those things change, that needs change. We look at the work we did this summer at the primary school to create space for student support. So it's not static, and even within the year it's changing. The goal is to have that plan reviewed by the facilities committee each year, and then we work closely with Chris and Christine to take and make small changes, and then the budget gets developed based off of that plan. And even sometimes after the plan is put together, like this year, we had planned intervention spaces at the primary school on the 2nd floor. That got switched more into creating that space on the 1st floor. So it's a fluid item, but it's something that we need to have to plan so that we don't have the problems in the future that we're not foreseeing. So challenges that I see we have on capital is our buildings are aging. Okay, our new high school was, you will say 2004, 2005, we can argue what year that is, okay, that we're approaching 15 years ago. Our really new elementary school now is approaching 20 years old, right? So that's not really a new building anymore. To kind of give you some ideas, you look at guideline life of equipment. HVAC equipment's guideline life is about 25 years. Okay. Now I don't know how we've gotten 47 years out of our stuff or 42 years out of the equipment at the Wyndham Middle School. Actually, we haven't, because those units are really noisy, causing problems. But you can see we're trying to plan in our plan those replacements so that we don't get caught with a big issue. But Our infrastructure is aging. We're having increased cost renovations and replacements. In the 10 years I've been here, I want to say that things that I could have done for $5,000 or $6,000 10 years ago now are $12,000 to $13,000 or more. So what I can do with the money becomes less. We talk about tight schedule, and then the changing needs. One of the things that we're seeing more is more intervention space need for students, and the need for cooling. Everything from an IEP that requires cooling to the fact that we're having these weather events that are making such we're sending kids home. We remember last year we had to send kids home early because it was too hot in some of our schools. So those are things that are changing, and we have to change our plan to meet. And finally, the status of the new middle school project in Wyndham. I don't know if you're aware, you're probably aware that 3 schools have been moved forward on the list. So we're 2 away, but when is that going to happen? And the challenges too is what do we address in the existing building while we're waiting for that? And if we're thinking about a 5-year from start to finish project, which I think is a good number to think about, some of these things we can't wait 5 or 6 years to take care of. So it's kind of tough. You're trying to find a solution that's best for the short term that will meet their needs, bridge us to that time period, and also be effective as far as improving the learning environment. So I'm not going to go over too many of the accomplishments this year, but I want to talk about a few of them that I'm really pleased with. I think that the renovation of the primary school is really meeting the needs of our students and staff. So I think that went really well. If you get a chance to go into the high school or the primary school and talk to the teachers, the new lighting system we're putting in is going on very well. It gives them flexibility to change lighting levels, lighting features. So that's really been a solid improvement. Finally, the thing I'll talk about is the heating improvements to both Jordan Small and the high school. Our boiler plants are both up and running now. We have built a redundancy. Jordan Small, for the first time, is able to run on dual fuel. We can run propane or oil. So should there be a problem in delivery, we have a backup, which is really pretty great. I'm really happy to say that the Raymond Elementary School playground project is done. It's been quite a process, that whole project, but it's done, and the kids are really enjoying the space. And that was the goal when we started, is to kind of see that change. And I think the space is appropriate, it's being used well, and it's going to serve us well in the future. We do have plans to continue to develop the trails behind that were created during the Sustainable Harvest. And believe it or not, in a few years we'll come up on round 2 of the harvest, because we get about, the forest has said 7 to 8 years between our last harvest and the next one, based on the age and condition of the trees. So I'm going to continue to do that and manage that property best we can. So looking forward, we need to continue to create space for student support. I don't see that changing. Individual learning and helping kids is something that we need to continue to work in our present building as well as our new building design. We're going to increasing need for cooling spaces and general cooling in all our buildings. Again, mechanical systems replacements, we talked about that, 25 years. Give you a couple for instance, real quick. At primary school, the back library air handler and the gym air handler were brand new in 1987. So that's well beyond the 25-year expectancy for that. So that's just one thing. I want to continue focus on energy saving projects such as lighting and HVAC, because every dollar we spend on HVAC and lighting is not money that helps create that educational experience. It's creating the environment so it can occur. So we can do that more efficiently. There's more funds we can put towards the children's education. And finally, we have infrastructure needs. We're working on some improvements to the treatment plant. Stormwater and pavement, if you get a chance to walk through some of our parking lots, you're going to see that those things are starting to get a little long in the tooth, so to speak. And those aren't things that are small projects. Those are relatively expensive. We're going to also be looking at some oil tank removals and replacements, because they're each in that end of life stage. So that's kind of a look forward. Look forward to work with this year to develop the plan on a more concrete basis, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Bill. That was great. Scott?
So I do have a question for you, Bill. We spend a significant amount of money on an HVAC system for the new Wyndham Middle School. I agree that we're not going to be able to wait 5 years before updating that. But Is there a way for you to be able to, once we start construction on the new building, to be able to take that unit that we just purchased 5 years, that main condensing unit that may be on the roof or whatever, and move it to another location? Maybe not so much the ventilation and stuff, but we might be able to recoup some of that cost and move it to another location.
Sure, happy to answer that question. So the Wyndham Middle School, much like the Jordan Small School, is heated by unit and ventilated by unit ventilators. And I could spend a lot of time, I'll keep it really brief. Unit ventilator basically pulls in air from outside, filters it, heats it, and puts it into the classroom. So what we've done in the middle school is we put in a newer style unit that actually has, one of the problems with unit ventilators is it comes into the building, there needs to be a mechanism to blow it out. Think of a balloon, right? We blow it in, it has to go out somewhere. One of the deficiencies we have in the middle school and a challenge at the Jordan Small School, the windows are pretty much our mechanism for air to go out. So it's hard to really ventilate those spaces. The new units we're putting in actually have air-to-air heat exchangers in them. So they're drawing the fresh air from the outside, and the exhaust air is going out and preheating as it goes back out. And what that does is provide us the ability to provide a very good temperature control as well as CO2 control. And if you remember from my talk before, CO2 levels really impact your ability to be alert. So we try to maintain under 1100 ppm per ASHRAE standard. So we actually can control those by targets 900. So the big advantage these units have is they do all those things, and they would be a direct retrofit to bring right up here to Jordan Small to put in place up here as an upgrade.
Okay.
Yeah, so we are trying to plan ahead, and this is a lower cost, high value solution versus putting in a central air handler that would be much more costly and wouldn't really retrofit to a new space.
Okay.
Yeah.
To piggyback on you, Scott, one of the things that we had talked about in general is a future use for that building. And so I'm wondering if there would still be a need for updated equipment, even though we have moved out of it as an educational facility, but it might be used for a variety of community things, or I don't even know. But it would seem to me that we might want to have a plan once we know the future use of that building, whether it would be smart to continue to update facilities there.
And what we're trying to focus on now is, again, these unit ventilators, as old as they are, they're noisy, and they're impacting education. And like I can hear that noise outside right now, and I'm easily distracted, and I don't think I'm alone. So it's just one of those things that if we can for the next 5 years, if we can make it so that the units perform quietly and work well, I think that's really worth the investment to make that happen. Because we're overdue. I mean, the units would really have a guideline life of about 20 years, which would have meant 1997 they should have been replaced. So I think we're doing well, but the plan would be to continually evaluate that, because if we find out tomorrow that we're in the queue and we're moving ahead, again, I think we need to look again at where we're at and what makes most sense. The good news is the board did put money in the capital reserve for that. So as we progress with that, it's not something that's impacting the operating budget. And as we move forward, before we make any large movements ahead, that would come back to the board and request permission to have that spending. But this year we tried 2 units, and the reason we did 2 is one upstairs was a floor-mounted unit, and we moved it up into the ceiling, so it's no longer on the floor, so it's not a shelf for things to be piled on top of and not to work. And the one on the ground floor was already a ceiling mounted unit. So it was 2 different conditions we wanted to evaluate.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question, and I really don't know a lot about it, so I'm going to hope you know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
But there was a thing on TV, and it's not the law yet, but testing schools for BPA.
Okay. I think on BPA's, that's in plastics, correct?
Mm-hmm. Right,
Yes.
and they feel there's a lot of it probably existing in the present schools.
Really?
And that was kind of all
Yep.
I got out of it, and evidently I'm probably the only one that heard it. So I guess, can you just make note so if it comes up again?
What I'll do, so we've been working on baseline indoor air quality testing and environmental testing. And as you're aware, one of the big things that we put in for environmental renovation was asbestos removal. So I'll get back to the board on that when I talk to the IAQ industrial hygiene expert that we work with on that, because I hadn't heard that that was something they were looking into, but I know that is something that's a great concern everywhere right now, concerning the impact that has on human health.
Yeah, and that was kind of like all I heard. It was basically, it's not, you know, there's no statutes or anything, but they were looking into it.
But
Did they
they're
say where they were finding it, Marge?
You know the news, you get a
Yep.
little piece of it. And then I had to leave to come here, so if they come on again, I didn't hear it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
Now, the superintendent's report?
Sure, just want to update the board on a couple things and also update the public since our last meeting. And I know we had some parents that came forward last meeting to want to talk a little bit about transportation arms and some of their concerns with that. In addition, there was some discussion about some concerns that were happening with some elementary run stops on Egypt Road. And so just want to let the public know that definitely that first of all, we're hearing your concerns, and we're also working on obviously things internally. Well, first of all, start with the extended stop arms, which went into law just in the middle of September as something that you know, was going to be something a little bit more viable for us. We've ordered 3 of those from Cressy, who is our bus supplier. Cressy has certified that our mechanics can install those arms, which is going to save on the installation costs as well. And initially, we're targeting the first 3 to Route 115, and I think by now all of us have either seen on Facebook or Channel 8 News a car that blew through, or actually 3 or 4 cars that went through our bus stop on 115, and so that will be one location. Second location is some areas on 202 where there's some frequent passing, or was frequent passing. And then, and additionally, Route 302, I think it's Bus 2 up here in Raymond, which handles some of those, and really making sure that they're going to work for us and that it's the right model for us to extend over time. In addition, Mike Kelly, and with help of the bus driver, which was great, re-engineered the Egypt run, and so they're doing a double run on that street for the elementary run to do door-side drop-offs on that for kids. And it's adding a couple extra minutes to the run, but I think people are being understanding of that, and that's just of where we are at the moment. Also want to thank the Wyndham Police and the Sheriff's Department. They've been great. They've been out tailing our buses. In addition, they've been waiting at areas and looking to catch individuals as they've been going through stops. And then additionally, Wyndham Police Department was great with adding an electronic sign at the North Wyndham Fire Barn for everyone to see the fact that, to bring attention. And then Wyndham Eagle working with us to get an article on the front page reminding everybody about that. So we'll continue to do some work on that. We're continuing to do some work with arm cameras, and our drivers are being vigilant to make sure that in fact that they're getting kids back and forth from school safely. Also just wanted to quickly update the public and the board, and Bill just brought this up a second ago. The state school board voted on projects 1 through 3 on the state priority list for construction. As the community might remember, Wyndham Middle School project is number 5 on that state priority list. The good news is that by schools 1 through 3 being voted, that means now we're number 2 on the list. And the state now is evaluating where they are in their financial processes, because everyone's trying to figure out what the cost of buildings are going to be. And then once they have a better idea of where those schools are, where their costs are, where they'll fall within their bond cycle, then they will be contacting schools that are a little farther up the list to look at projects. To go along with that, staff from Wyndham Middle School and Jordan Small Middle School had a chance to do some middle school visioning and project planning and building planning with Frank Locker, and some of you had a chance to meet Frank through a facilities meeting last year. World-renowned school planner, and led both buildings through a process of looking at how building structure can be influenced by the type of programming that you want to do. And so through that 2-day process, it was actually kind of neat. The culminating activity was staff from Wyndham Middle School came up with a pictorial diagram of what they envisioned the new Wyndham Middle School to look like. and staff from Jordan Small had a pictorial piece of some future renovations that Bill and I will be talking about, and we'll be talking about with the board here at some point about ways that we can maximize the space at Jordan Small. So it was a very, very beneficial process for both groups to go through that, and both left feeling like they want to pursue some project pieces and want to look at their buildings a little differently and how they use them. Last thing that I want to mention, because we are on the eve of our possible first school closing of the year. It's a reality of a windstorm and power outages and such, but remind the public that our Blackboard Connect, that for parents, that's our primary source, and so we use the addresses, phone numbers, email addresses that are in Infinite Campus. All of that is mined. All of the school closing 1 hour, 2 hour delay messages were updated today. Hopefully we won't have to use them tomorrow. But just a reminder to the public that if it's a 1 hour delay, everything is shifted back an hour. I know it sounds simple, but buses are an hour later, school starts an hour later. If it's 2 hour delay, 2 hours later, buses are 2 hours later. And if we don't have school, then we don't have school. But we're approaching that season where closures, and probably most of us remember a couple years in October, we had a storm where I think we lost power here in Raymond for 2 or 3 days. And it was quite impactful, so hopefully we don't end up with that again. So, and lastly, just want to add, obviously Jordan Small, some staff from that, and as well as Wyndham Middle School were involved in visioning. In addition, classroom teachers had a chance to participate in some additional math trainings, some additional professional work, and we had a couple of really good days of professional development last week, and the feedback from teachers has been very, very positive. I found the days to be very, very useful.
Thank you. Okay. Board roundtable. Anyone having anything they would like to round?
If I may?
Yes.
So just to kind of piggyback off of what Chris had just said, as far as school closings, tonight I happened to see on the news that there is a town in Illinois that is doing electronic snow days. They call it e-snow days. So when the schools end up closing for significant events, then those teachers can broadcast. Kids can do work from home. I found it to be pretty interesting, especially on the eve of something that could potentially cause school closings. So I actually just emailed everybody the link that I saw. So, and then I also wanted to give a quick shout out to all of the RSU 14 athletics. Their seasons are going to be wrapping up. Some have there's been a couple that I think have just about getting ready to wrap up, and then the majority of them will probably wrap up here in the next few weeks or so. So I just wanted to say that it was a very successful fall sports. And the third thing that I wanted to mention, I wanted to thank the Wyndham Police Department. I was on my way into work and passing by the North Wyndham fire station at about 6 o'clock in the morning and saw big bright flashing lights, and I'm like, uh-oh, somebody got pulled over, and it was actually one of the signs that said stop for school buses. It's the law. I didn't realize you guys had those signs.
I thought you were going to say that you were pulled over.
I know.
Not that day. So thank you to the Wyndham Police Department for watching our school buses.
Jenny and I had the wonderful experience of attending the visioning on Thursday and Friday, and I have to say it was really fascinating, Frank's process, and I had to leave early on Friday, so I don't know what the final product is, and I'm kind of anxious, but the way that this group got to that ending was pretty darn impressive. And definitely Frank knows what he's talking about, and he showed numerous examples of schools across the nation and even talked about internationally schools that he's been involved with. So I feel pretty fortunate as a district that we have his expertise to help guide us as we move forward with our middle school.
I'd like to piggyback on that and say what she said, but also to say I was over the moon impressed with the involvement of the students who gave up their off time, their day off, to be there and participate. They were from the student council, and so a sixth grader was at our table, at my table, and there were ones at each table, sixth, seventh, and eighth, and they were fabulous. They were thoughtful and well-spoken and paid attention, and I was very, very impressed. And so, yay to them and yay to the evidence of the great education that's going on in our school system. Anybody else? Marge?
Okay, on another vein, because we all worry about safety, but for folks who have not seen it advertised or on Facebook, there are two days you can do trunk or treat on the high school campus. One of them is the 26th, I think, at the middle school, if people want to take their kids there. And the other one is, I don't remember if it was the 30th or the 31st. The Refuge Church is putting one on. It must be in the high school parking lot, but they've got to be close to each other. But those are the two that are going on in Wyndham. So if people are not comfortable taking their kids out roaming the streets, which I think is a great thing, that's okay, or hunting down those great neighborhoods, you can get a lot in a small area, especially if you have small ones that you don't want to be out there. So just reminding everybody, there's stuff out there, and I'm sure Raymond has. You guys got a great neighborhood up there.
No, they all come to my house.
It's Janny's house.
Right up there. You know, so that's coming again. So I want to remind everybody that be very, very careful. There's going to be a lot of small children out there, and they really tend to run. They tend to not be able to see things too well because they have all those costumes on. So just be aware that they're going to be out there, and it gets dark earlier.
We're doing this because we won't have another meeting until after
That's right.
Halloween. Not that
We're not pushing
okay.
the season.
Anybody else?
The only thing I have to say is I will be at Jenny's house for Halloween.
Especially if she's baking.
Thank you so much. Okay, anybody else? Okay.
Oh, I'm gonna just
Yes,
really quickly. The withdrawal committee has a programs subcommittee meeting on October 22nd at 6 o'clock here. If anyone is interested in talking about programming for a possible Raymond district.
I forgot one thing, Jenny,
Yes.
which is that the Wyndham High School Student Council has some students that are expressing some interest in possibly serving for us, and they're working through an application process. So
Wonderful.
that is moving forward. I just forgot to mention that in my report.
Well, thank you. Thank you. We enjoy their participation. So, okay, could I have a motion to go into executive session, please?
I move to enter into an executive session to discuss RSU 14's emergency management plan as presented by Bill Hanson, Director of Facilities, Property Services, and Special Projects, and not to return to regular meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Okay.
I'm just glad, because Bill just said he was a director of